Like me, you have no doubt attended lectures where the information is highly relevant and a requirement to improving your personal development and career plans. But the delivery has sometimes been lacking, and the greatest complaint I always hear is that the presentation was monotone, either too slow or possibly too fast in delivery, and lacked any real enthusiasm. One of the best lectures or presentations I ever attended was delivered by a famed professor of English literature, and he was giving his opinions of the novels of Thomas Hardy, of which he gleefully tore them to bits. Well, the point is, he was honest, passionate, and enthusiastic, and he varied the pace and tone of his voice for maximum effect. The delivery made the lecture hugely entertaining, with the content of the lecture being memorable for his delivery and his performance. I latterly found out that he was a functioning alcoholic and was probably drunk at the time. Nevertheless, it was memorable. My name is Matt Mason. I'm a theatre director and a drama teacher. And this video is intended to offer you a few observations on how to present to camera with regard to voice and physicality. Now, you might have been presenting for years to large groups and have the territory sorted. You've got it down to your own fine art. And if you have, well, that's great. So maybe there's not much advice needed from me. However, if you haven't presented directly to camera very often, or maybe not at all, then here's a few ideas that might help you to understand how changes in tone and pace of voice and good use of body language can help you relax and enjoy the experience of presenting to the camera. When we change tone with a new sentence or phrase, it can help to retain the interest of the listener. We want the tonal value to reflect the future mood one is trying to create. Now, here's an example without the tonal change. And if the ball is passed at pace, it's easier to control for whoever receives it. If it is passed slowly, the player has to work harder to manipulate the ball. And now with the tonal changes. And if the ball is passed at pace, it's easier to control for whoever receives it. If it is passed slowly, the player has to work harder to manipulate the ball. You see, often this is preceded by the words but, however, remember, if, maybe, perhaps, and you can use all of these words as indicators to tonal changes. For example, if the ball is passed slowly, or maybe if the ball is passed slowly, or remember if the ball is passed slowly. All of these are good indicators to tonal changes. Who, what, when, where, why, and how are questions. Now, actors are often asked to stress the first word of any sentence to enhance the importance of the coming information. Now, here's an example without. What would you do now that you're down to 10 men? And here's an example with. Now, what would you do now that you're down to 10 men? Or who would you substitute now you're down to 10 men? Or why would you make this substitution when we are down to 10 men? When we list aspects of coaching practice, it's easy just to trot them out in a similar way. Now, here's without the tonal changes. Speed, agility, strength, desire, motivation, and confidence. Now, here's with the tonal changes. Speed, agility, strength, desire, motivation, and confidence. Within the context of delivering any of the above is the need to often outline the positive or negative aspects of them. Now, this is usually a rise or a fall in the delivery. Here's an example. A strong start off the blocks gives the sprinter the next 10 seconds of confidence. A bad start, and they're fighting to raise their performance with every one of their next steps. Now, there was a pause in that last part, and this is something that can also be used to retain the interest of the viewer. Naturally, We wait to hear what they have to say, as it creates a minor tension, and tension is what holds an audience in film and theatre. So, don't be afraid to characterise the material with any of these tonal changes or include the odd pause for dramatic effect. Dead arms are bad. That's not to say we want you to emulate a windmill when you deliver, but you can be gesticular. Physical accentuation of language is good. It's a human aspect of communication, and we all do it when telling stories or when describing something or even in frustration. So don't be afraid to gesticulate. Use your arms during the presentation, as it can help to communicate your passion and your enthusiasm for your specialism. And it can make the presentation much more engaging and entertaining. Now here's an example without. She felt at this point in the second set that if she didn't force the game and go for a few shots, well, the game was all but over. Now here's what not to do. She felt at this point in the second set that if she didn't force the game and go for a few shots, well, the game was all but over. And now here's an example with the right amount of gesticulation. She felt that at this point in the second set, that if she didn't force the game and go for a few shots, well, the game, it was all but over. Don't be afraid to vary the pace of how you deliver to camera. That was too fast. Don't be afraid to vary the pace of how you deliver to camera. When we're nervous, our speech usually becomes too quick, and it can destroy the pace and message of whatever we're saying. What we're looking for is a conversational aspect to the speech, where you sound like you're talking to your best friend over lunch. Okay, the topic might be a little different, but the pace should be similar. Sometimes slightly slower, sometimes faster, sometimes louder, sometimes softer, and occasionally a pause. Think of your video as being how you are in a one-to-one conversation with your best friend. And the easiest way to prepare and make sure for the pacing is to rehearse. Use your phone or a video camera to record yourself and analyze it afterwards. If you think you're speaking too quickly, then you probably are. If you think you're speaking too slowly, you probably are. Once you've rehearsed it a few times, your pacing should be close to perfect. Be in control and the viewer will trust you. Remember, a nervous performer creates a nervous audience. What can naturally happen when we start to infuse language with tonal changes, pauses, or emphases is that we use more facial expressions. And this reinforces the messages being delivered. And if this occurs when you're presenting your material, that's great. There is so much more to communication than just what you say. It's how you say it. Your body language, facial expressions, and eye contact are just as important as the words you're communicating. For example, consider a time when you were being interviewed. Was your interviewer serious the whole time, or did they smile? How did their facial expressions make you feel while you were being interviewed? Were you unnerved by a serious interviewer, or were you put at ease by someone who smiled and they made eye contact? Have you seen someone deliver bad news with a smile on their face? No. Then you already know the importance of facial expressions for communication and how facial expressions should match the emotional content. The most important thing when presenting is to absolutely just be yourself. And if you occasionally frown to accentuate a negative, then that's fine. But conversely, a big smile now and again, a positive accentuation, is even better, and it holds an audience. Smiling is good, as it will show your audience that you're happy to be there and confident in the material that you're delivering. Here's a quick summary. Adopt the appropriate tone to help vocally describe your intended point. Don't have dead arms. A modicum of gesticulation is good. Let your arms and hands help you make your point. Frown and smile. We'll get the message. Slow down for negatives and move the pace along for positives. Remember, rehearse, rehearse, and rehearse some more. Now to finish, I'm going to deliver a short passage twice. Now the second being more in tune with how a presentation to camera should look and sound. Here's the first one. When a sports psychologist uses an interactional approach, they have to consider both situational determinants and personality traits exhibited by the individual. Their interactional approach considers both psychological traits and situational influences on an athlete's behaviour. The two aspects mix and can very often alter that behaviour. The psychological traits and environmental influences interact and combine in unique ways to sculpt your behaviour. As an example, a football player may have a short fuse, which often leads to rash and potentially hostile actions. Yet the soccer player will not show that behaviour consistently. Only when he is forced to react to the psychological conditions that initiate those behaviour triggers does the player become aggressive and snap in a violent manner. Fortunately, there are methods the sports psychologist can use to block the triggers and stop him from being sent off for the third time that season. Now here's the second example, more in keeping with what we need. When a sports psychologist uses an interactional approach, they have to consider both situational determinants and personality traits exhibited by the individual. The interactional approach considers both psychological traits and situational influences on an athlete's behaviour. The two aspects mix and can very often alter that behaviour. The psychological traits and environmental influences interact and combine in unique ways to sculpt that behaviour. Now, as an example, a football player may have a short fuse which often leads to rash and potentially hostile actions, yet the soccer player will not show that behaviour consistently. Only when he's forced to react to the psychological conditions that initiate those behaviour triggers does the player become aggressive and snap in a violent manner. Fortunately, there are methods the sports psychologist can use to block the triggers and stop him from being sent off for the third time that season. We hope this helps. And don't worry, because things can go wrong, even for the professionals. Have a look at this. She felt that if she didn't go, where am I? I need to go back. I've lost the place in it. Yeah. Than was previously expected. One of the best lectures or presentations I ever attended was delivered by a famed ink